Hello everyone, welcome again to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Certification course. Everyone in the auditorium can be seated. Those of you that are still coming in, welcome, and those of you that are joining online, welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us to continue this education. And the 7th chapter of the Self-Control is kind of a educational microbiology, learn how things work kind of program deal. And it's a lot of things that can be adapted into chapter 7 as we go forth, and you've seen a lot of videos brought forth and a lot of information brought forth, not by just myself, but also by William, Katan, and David, because there's so much information that goes into what affects our lives. And we're going to look at a lot more tonight and try to put a little bit more into what everything that has been brought so far. And we hopefully realize that there's just multiple kingdoms around us. You know, scientists and microbiologists know these things, but it's something that we all need to recognize. And we're going to look a lot tonight at how just basic everyday living also affects our life, and how some of the things we eat can kill us. You know, the things we're supposed to eat is we're supposed to have enjoyment. They're supposed to supply nutrients to our bodies, but some of the things that we devour can kill us. But before we get into class, this is a reminder that we're going to be finishing up in the next 2 or possibly 3, hopefully the next 2 classes. Tonight in the next class, we'll finish up the self-control unit, and then we'll go into the respect unit. And if you don't have a respect unit, you can either purchase one or you can download. It's on our official Peaceful Solution Facebook page, the PDF file. You can download it. It's at the very top of the page. And feel free to download it, use it, make copies of it. The only thing we ask is please do not make any changes to the curricula that is in the book. That we really insist that the program be taught exactly how it was written and the instructions that were given to it. That's where the maximum benefit is received. But of course, here looking back at Lesson Plan 7, page D, we're still in Procedure 7, and this is where David was at last class. But we're going to go back and some of the things that David had covered and also William had covered, and tying up what we're going to be covering tonight. And so we'll read the whole procedure and then we'll move forward. But it says, tell students that they will now explore how choices affect the food supply. And it's very important to remember that. Our choices affect not only ourselves, but everybody else, the food supply, which we're going to see tonight, along with a lot of things that's already been shown, how everything we do can affect someone else when it comes to food. Ask students if they have ever heard of mad cow disease. And if you're not familiar with that, I would encourage you to go back and watch. William gave a lot of information on that. Katan has covered some of that. A lot of videos that were given showing what it looks like and the details that go into it. I would encourage everyone, if you haven't seen those classes, please go back and watch them. There was, hours put into bringing forth information that is all around the world. It's not just isolated to the United States. It's not just isolated to North America, but these things are affecting people all around the world. Of course, it says instruct students to read the section Cannibalistic Cows, found on page 209, and then ask students if they have heard of genetically modified foods. Have students read pages 211 through 213 under the section entitled The Saga Continues, and complete the quiz on page 214. And that's where David left off last class, but we're still got some things that we want to tie in from what they have covered into our class tonight. And it says, discuss the answers, emphasize to students that because many foods contaminate slowly, affect the body, serious consequences manifest themselves years later. So we must consider how our choices affect the food supply. And, of course, that was covered in the Cannibalistic Cows, but we're also going to talk about a few other things tonight as we move forward. But go ahead and be turning over to page 214 with The Saga Continues. We've got quite a few videos we want to show tonight to, first of all, so people understand it's not just the Peaceful Solution saying this. The Peaceful Solution is just put together the information from multiple sources with a great team that started back in 1994 with gathering information. And there's many people all around the world that is also putting forth this information so everyone can see that we live in a pretty deadly world. I know we recognize nuclear weapons, and we've talked about those. We recognize guns and knives. That's in the news every day. But there are many things that you can't even see that can kill you. And a lot of people have kind of became aware in the last 3 years, right at 3.5 years, with COVID-related deaths. You know, you couldn't see it, couldn't taste it, couldn't smell it. And then after you got COVID, you still couldn't taste it. Couldn't taste anything after that. And there was a lot of COVID-related deaths where people who had already had health problems were just magnified immensely to the point the bodies could not handle it. Well, we're going to talk some more about tonight how there's other things, especially with things that David covered last class with genetically modified foods, the way the soil has been contaminated. And we're going to actually get to see a video tonight of what the soil looks like and then what it looks like when fertilizer is applied to it and how it actually kills the bacteria that's supposed to be there. And then even, you know, I know of a couple farmers, and I thought it was interesting when I first heard this about 30 years ago, how every 7 years they let their land rest. And it shows in this video that the bacteria and all of those healthy things you need grow faster when the ground is not tilled. So if you were to work it for 6 years, giving it a rest, you know, for a year would actually help bring back everything you need to give it a go again. It's actually very smart, but to do that, money can't be your object. You know, in today's commercial marketing, it's not only how much can I plant and how much can I grow, but how many times a year can I get it done? There's no such thing as letting the land rest, and it works it very hard. But here on the top of page 211, it says it really does not make a lot of sense to spray poison on foods that we need to eat in order to stay alive. When you think about it, it doesn't make any sense at all. You know, you wouldn't take, you take your French fries and you put ketchup on it. You might put a little salt on them, but who would want to take pesticides and spray them on your potatoes, you know, or your French fries or the other things that we eat? It really doesn't make sense to do that. And we're going to find out a little bit more tonight that when you get your food, you got to work pretty hard to get it off of it. If some of it you can't get off. But continuing on here, where the saga continues, here at the very first sentence, it says, even if you're not particularly fond of vegetables, you still rely on the agricultural industry in more ways than you can imagine. You know, and I've talked to people, I can't stand tomatoes, but boy, they go through bottles of ketchup. You know, and well, it takes tomatoes to make ketchup, or they like tomato soup, or they like other things. You know, I like pizza. You like pizza sauce? Oh, I love it. Well, it's got tomatoes in it. You know, it's kind of like, I remember seeing a child that couldn't stand raisins, and they loved A1 steak sauce. When they found out A1 steak sauce is full of raisins, they almost threw up. You know, but that's how it really takes place. There's things in food that we might not know, but all those things are healthy. But looking over to page 212, you know, we talked about this poison, and once again, David covered this in detail last class. But we want to get these things fresh in our mind before we see this video, and other videos that will go along with it. But here in the second paragraph, or the first full paragraph on page 212, it says, however, many European countries refuse to allow genetically altered foods into their lands or on their tables. And we're going to see that they also do that with additives and preservatives tonight. That many countries have banned things that I think specifically there's 9, and many countries have banned them except the United States. We still use them and allow them, and scientists even readily tell that they're dangerous to your health. They're not beneficial to you. But continuing on, it says, the fear that food will be harmful in the long run, this uncertainty has many people worried about the future of our food supply. And, you know, and that's something we can't take for granted. It's only there as long as you take care of it. And I want you to really notice when we play the video, the living organisms that are in the soil. When you take a seed and you put it in the soil, it is the soil that gives life to the plant. It has to have the healthy things in the soil to give life to the plant. If those things are not there, the plant will not grow. It will just rot. But when things are there, the soil gives life, or what's in the soil gives life. And we see it give life specifically to the things we grow in it. But manipulation through genetically modified substances or fertilizers, because they go in and they'll do what they call a soil test. And they'll check to see what your soil has and does not have, and they try to take and manipulate the soil to do what you want for the product you're trying to grow. And a lot of times you can be going the wrong direction as far as health-wise, but monetary-wise, you can make a lot of money, but health-wise, you're destroying a lot of things. Looking over to page 213, the question of the day, it says, what other choices do we have to control insects and weeds? And notice here, mankind successfully raised crops for food for thousands of years without pesticides, herbicides, and genetic modification. Although it requires more labor and effort to raise food free of herbicides and insecticides, it can be done, but it takes a lot of work. Here are a few ways that food can be organically grown without the use of chemicals. And of course, David covered this once again, and I encourage you to go back and see the classes, the last class that was taught, and you'll get a lot of information on this. And information that can't be recovered tonight, but he did a great job of bringing all those things. But I want you to notice, this is the first video we have tonight showing the soil and how the fertilizer can break it down, but watch the beauty of the organisms that actually live in the soil and actually bring forth what we eat. It's a really awesome thing to watch. At this time, if we could please play video 1.
Healthy living soil is filled with a balance of fungi, bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, and microarthropods. An incredible diversity of organisms make up the soil food web. From the tiniest one-cell bacteria, algae, fungi, and protozoa, to the more complex nematodes and microarthropods, to the visible earthworms, insects, and plants. We're going to zoom in 100 to 400 times magnification to check out these critters living in our soil and get a close-up look at what healthy soil looks like. First, let's take a look at bacteria. The smallest, most plentiful microbes, bacteria benefit plants by increasing nutrient availability, including nitrogen. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides limit bacterial numbers, stopping aggregates from being formed, leaving no structure in the soil. Tilling leads to bacterial-dominant soil, thereby selecting for weeds. Soil that's left undisturbed has a nice balance of bacteria, fungi, with plentiful aggregates, organic matter, and soil structure. Fungi grow in long thread-like strands or hyphae in the soil. Reduced tillage allows fungi to flourish, so they can help plants take up water and nutrients, resist disease, and tolerate drought. A fungal dominant soil is usually found in woodlands and around mature trees. Incorporating fungal dominant soil in your compost or compost tea can help inoculate soils, leading to a balanced fungi-bacterial ratio, selecting for crops we want to grow. Protozoa are single-celled predators, which include flagellates, amoeba, and ciliates. They feed on bacteria, fungi, other protozoa, and organic matter, releasing plant-available nutrients. Protozoa are responsible for mineralizing nitrogen in agricultural soils. They are also a good source of food for other soil organisms and help prevent certain pathogens from establishing on plants. Like protozoa, nematodes are important in releasing nutrients in plant-available form. They help distribute bacteria and fungi through the soil by carrying microbes on their surfaces and in their digestive systems. They are useful indicators of soil quality, since nematode populations are impacted by all land management practices. They enhance soil quality by regulating the populations of other soil organisms and consuming disease-causing organisms. Microarthropods. They are fundamental to the creation of humus and the formation of soil. They contribute to a healthy soil ecology, especially helping with the decomposition of soil organic matter into a form that bacteria can consume. They contribute to nutrient cycling in the soil and also help suppress plant pests. They actually increase nitrogen in soil by digesting microbes and organic matter.
You know, it's an amazing thing to see these things through a microscope when they're magnified 2, 3, and 400 times, so you can be seen with the eye itself. And you know, it's something to behold once your mind realizes that there is an enormous amount of life that we can't see that works day and night just so we can enjoy the basic things that we eat, the air we breathe. It's an amazing thing. We tend to only care about the things we see in the here and now. It's kind of like war in Ukraine and Russia. As long as it's not in our land, we don't really care. They can do whatever they want. And sometimes, many times, the land itself is treated that way. But if you've seen in the video, those microbes that are working very hard along with the bacteria to keep the soil healthy, to bring forth food, can be killed through fertilizing, pesticide, herbicides. You can actually kill them. And then you start trying to, I would define it as bringing forth Frankenstein food. So instead of these natural kingdoms that bring it forth, you have chemicals that are now trying to do the job that the microbes would do if we would take care of them. But of course, as you've seen in the video, letting the land rest also helps them grow, which is really important. You can't try to manipulate, you know, and David brought that out last class, showing how commercial agricultural produce, they're more about the bottom dollar instead of about the quality of food. And that becomes a sad thing. You know, it becomes a sad part of life because you don't get the full benefits of what we should be getting out of the food. And that's what keeps us healthy. With that in mind, though, I want you to look over to page 216. David finished up. He read through the quiz, went through the answers. So we're going to go over to page 216 with Straight Talk. And we're going to really take a look at where here you see in the first sentence it says, "Isn't it ironic that the food we need to sustain our lives can jeopardize our health and in some cases even kill us?" Well, if we kill the things that bring forth our food, we can't blame them, now can we? I think we'd have to look at who's killing the microorganisms that's trying to do the jobs of bringing forth the food. You know, if we learn to understand them and work with them, we'll find out that they will help us to have a lot less disease in our life. But also, as we've discussed in these classes, some of the things we eat are poison already, but they're popular to eat. And we're going to watch a video here in a moment where a young man ate something and it almost killed him. It literally almost cost him his very life. But back to the first paragraph here, it says, "Keep in mind that the long-term effects of harmful foods on the body are not always detected right away. As in the case of mad cow disease, sometimes it takes years before the symptoms develop." And if you turn back over to page, I think it was on page 209 or 210, page 210, the very bottom, you know, this is something to remember because it says in cows, the incubation period is about 5 years, talking about this mad cow disease. That means it might take up to 5 years or more for the cow to show symptoms of the disease. It is estimated that it takes approximately 10 to 15 years before symptoms appear in humans. Facts are still being gathered to determine just how serious this could become for us. But you think about that, 5 years in the cow, 10 to 15 years in the human, you got 20 years there. And a lot of people will think, it can't be like that. I know a person that died from colon cancer, and he died at 59, and it was detected when he was 57. And I remember the doctor telling him that it most likely started in his middle 30s, that they could detect and determine the age of how long it was there that long. And of course, when you look into this, there's reasons why these things take place. It can sound complicated, but yet it can be very simplistic once someone reads and studies the information on cause and effect. But of course, once again, I want to play the second video, but I want you to keep in mind the things we eat can actually jeopardize our health. So if we could please go ahead and play video 2.
This program contains material of a disturbing nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
You know, you think about that the next time someone tells you about the other white meat. Scientists truly have said that if you want to kill all of the bacteria in pork, you'd have to incinerate it. I would advise teachers, Animal Planet, not to give them a plug, they have done an awesome job with showing what occurs when bacteria, parasites, and things get into the body. They've got numerous ones on pork tapeworm. You can go online. That's a pretty common surgery here in the United States now, the removal of pork tapeworms from the brain. Many people, I beg teachers to go online to share this with their students. Many people live with intestinal worms in their intestines for years. And there's an enormous amount of cleanses now that's out on the market to help people flush them out. And it scares them when they see that stuff come out. But all of this stuff is online for anyone to go read. It's kind of like the microbes in the ground. If you don't really look at it and study it, you never really know there's a world there until you find out, oh, I've got a cyst somewhere. I've got this, I've got that. Well, how did I get it? Well, it didn't just evolve. You know, there's a cause and reaction. But notice they said in the video, he said he thought he got it from an unwashed salad. Well, how would he have got it from an unwashed salad? The man said that it could only be spread two ways. Eating, of course, pork, or through the feces of someone who has tapeworm that is laying eggs in the colon. Well, how prominent would that be in our society? How common would that be? We've talked about the shopping carts at big box stores and so forth, and how people don't wash their hands, they go in. But then what about restaurants? You go in, they got these big commercial washing machines for the dishes, and they have these commercial soaps that spray all over them, and they come out squeaky clean. But what about all the hands that touch them from that point afterwards? Could it possibly be going into this beautiful, fancy, high-dollar restaurant that I could get something? Well, pay close attention as we play the next video. So, yeah.
With America finally opening up after 2 years of COVID restrictions, people are eager to go places and do things. And one of those things is dining out. But how clean are the dishes and utensils you're given to eat with? We put them to the test, and Stephen Fabian tells you what we found.
That salad looks delicious, but how clean is that fork you're about to put in your mouth? Now that restaurants are springing back to life, it's time to start wondering just how clean are all those dishes and plates. Most restaurants use large industrial dishwashers like this one. They load up their dirty plates and silverware onto trays, and then they're cleaned with scalding hot water and commercial-grade soap. Now, when the process is over, everything comes out sterilized and squeaky clean. But what happens between now and when these dishes and silverware reach your table? Here's the concern. By the time you get your entree, those utensils and plates have been handled by multiple employees, and that can be a potential problem. So we decided to swab some utensils and dishes, from a swanky steakhouse in Rockefeller Center to popular chains like this Applebee's in the heart of Times Square. Our producers carefully collected samples. Then we shipped them to IEH Laboratories in Seattle for testing. 4 days later, so doctor, the results are in.
Wow, it was pretty bad. We're not talking about just a little bacteria. We're talking about a lot.
Dr. Susan Whittier, clinical microbiologist at Columbia University, reviewed the lab's report.
I actually have a plate that I can show you really up close if you want to see it. Like, it has millions and millions of bacteria.
At that Applebee's, this cup we tested had a whopping bacteria count of 2.4 billion. That's billion with a B. And this plate full of mozzarella sticks had a bacteria count of 2.2 billion. Dr. Whittier says that's a concerning amount of bacteria, enough to possibly get you sick.
Even more surprising, 4 of the samples had millions of bacteria that would you normally find in fecal matter or poop. Even more surprising, 4 of the samples had millions of bacteria that would you normally find in fecal matter or poop.
We also tested 3 samples at Del Frisco's in Rockefeller Center, where the sizzling steaks look delicious. The plate and glass came back clean, but the fork, it tested positive for E. coli. And over at this Olive Garden, the lab detected E. coli growing on the rim of their never-ending salad bowl.
It's disgusting because you think you're going to a restaurant to eat and it's going to be cleanly, and It's not.
Dr. Whittier says cross-contamination is a major problem. Bottom line, restaurant employees need to do a better job washing their hands.
Obviously, you don't want somebody else's bacteria on a fork you're going to be using or a plate you're eating off of.
So, when I was growing up, my mom told me to be careful what I put in my mouth. I would, advise everyone, don't think because you can't see something that it's not there. Once again, I encourage teachers, go online and research the lettuce, the spinach, and the other items that are bought and purchased, and people get sick and people die. I don't want to name certain restaurants, but certain restaurants were known in the news just a couple years ago. People would get diarrhea in a very harsh way and many other bacterias in their gut from eating at certain locations. Well, why is that? What's taking place there? And once again, it's not isolated to the restaurant you've seen right there. I don't want to throw, Applebee's or Olive Garden or other restaurants. They're all susceptible to this. I grew up working in a restaurant in the first 6 years of my life, and I was familiar of what people do to make money and to kind of skimp around what the health department requires of you, even if it came to not using soap until the health department showed up. But these were things that people did. But once again, notice 2.4 billion bacteria on the glass, and then 2.2 billion bacteria with those cheese sticks. It's pretty disgusting when you think about, the server that just served you, what's on their hands? Did they wash your hands? What is their body going through, and what do they have on their hands? What's underneath their fingernails? You know nothing about them. So the soap and the commercial washing machine or dishwasher they have there in the kitchen doesn't do much once it enters into other people's hands. And consider, if you've never worked in a restaurant, if you're people that enjoy eating in a restaurant, start counting how many hands your food goes through by the time it gets to you. It's quite a few, and you don't even see the hands in the kitchen, but it's quite a few hands that it'll go through before it gets to you. So thinking about that, seeing the dangers of the pork tapeworm, and of course how you've seen how there's tons of disease out there, bacteria, parasites, they're all over the place. Well, that's not the only thing that can be damaging to us. Here in the second paragraph on page 216, it says, here's another example. For decades, many artificial colorings used as additives in foods were thought to be safe for human consumption. Once again, were thought to be safe for human consumption. In World War II, margarine was the savior, is what they said for the soldiers. Now, margarine's supposed to be the death. Death to the people that eat it's what they say. But at one time, they had better than salt, better than sugar, better than eggs, better than this, better than that. After about 10 years, they find out, don't do that. It wasn't better after all. Don't do it. It'll kill you. Well, what about for those that did do it and it's too late? How does that help them? Well, notice here it says they were later found out to pose major health risk. Now, after they're found out to pose major health risks, do you think that people discontinue using them? Remember what David brought out last class about commercial businesses and how the bottom dollar is truly the goal. They have to answer to their investors, and that's who they're working for because they're running a mega businesses. These aren't small businesses. These are mega businesses. But continuing on, notice it says they were consequently banned from use because they cause cancer in major organs of the body. Of course, these are only a few ways food can harm us if we as a society are not careful to stop and consider the long-term health effects of the choices we make today. And remember what a society is that we learn in the character unit. That's a group of people, a body of people that live by a common set of rules. And when we break those rules, remember, rules keep us safe. That's the basic morality. There on page 8 of the character unit, we had the dividing line between what's right and what's wrong. When we break these rules in society, whether it's to gain money or to gain the upper hand on someone else, someone's going to suffer. And it could be the very person that's behind the breaking of the rule, but a lot of times if people know it will bring harm, they stay away from it and they let everybody else do it. But of course, keep these things in mind with these additives that are put into food, and they know that they're bad, but do you think if they're bad, would they ban them? If we could please go ahead and play video 4.
Food additives banned in other countries, but legal in the U.S. When it comes to food additives, it's become a real struggle to find one without the other. That's why it's so important to collaborate with and support local farms and organic food distributors and eat real food. Let's dive into some dangerous food additives, starting with number 9, red number 40 food color. If you live in the U.S. and like the McDonald's strawberry sundae, you need to know that it contains red number 40, while in Europe you can have the same sundae colored naturally from strawberries. Being the most commonly used artificial food dye, red number 40 is found in cereals, candies, cheeses, meats, beverages, and many other foods. However, it's banned in Switzerland, UK, Norway, Finland, France, and Austria. This food dye, along with many others, has been called part of the rainbow of risk. They are all byproducts of petroleum. Would you drink motor oil? I don't think so. All artificial food coloring should be avoided, along with really anything artificial for that matter. It has been proven that red number 40 decreases concentration and increases hyperactivity in children, and is even linked to brain cancer. Number 8, arsenic. Arsenic is a poison. Eat enough, even over an extended period of time, and it will kill you. It could cause a drop in a child's IQ, growth problems, impaired brain development, even cancer later in life. Amazingly, arsenic is actually added to chicken feed in the U.S. to make the meat appear pinker and fresher. It leaves behind traces of inorganic arsenic in the meat that we consume that is a known carcinogen. It has also been associated with cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. Number 7, potassium bromate. In the U.S., unless you're eating bread labeled organic, you can be pretty sure that potassium bromate is one of the ingredients. It strengthens the dough and allows for higher rising. Potassium bromate is banned in the European Union, Argentina, Canada, Nigeria, and other countries. Scientists believe that there is no such thing as a safe level of exposure to carcinogens. No matter how little the exposure, it can cause trouble down the line. Even though it is classified as possibly carcinogenic to humans, to no one's surprise, potassium bromate is still not banned. Number 6, olestra. Also known as olein, this stuff is one of the worst inventions ever. Olestra is a blend of sucrose polyester made from ingredients that are commonly found in vegetable oil and sugar. It is used in foods as a substitute for fat, so you won't get a ton of extra calories from eating those potato chips. It has also been called the dieter's dream because you can eat all the junk food you want and never gain weight. The problem is, it doesn't work. And studies, including those done by Purdue University, show that rats that were fed chips made with olestra ate more overall and gained more weight than rats that ate regular potato chips. Number 5, azodicarbonamide, or ADA. What do yoga mats and common breakfast cereals have in common? Yep, it's ADA. ADA is a whitening agent and dough conditioner that is used in bread making and cereal flour. Having in mind that cereal is the most common children's food, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration still doesn't recommend consumers to change their diets, claiming that it is safe. But studies by epidemiologists have proven differently. Researchers have gathered data which suggests that ADA is linked to everything from asthma and cancer to hormone dysfunction and immune system disruption. And while it's still in almost 500 products in the U.S., it's banned in Europe. Number 4, ractopamine. Moving up in this list, we keep wondering, why does the U.S. approve such things, while more than half of the world doesn't? Now let's look at ractopamine. This food additive is used in animal feed to promote leanness in animals that are raised for their meat. Yes, it increases the animal's weight and therefore the farmer's bottom line, but this doesn't mean it's safe. In 2004, the use of this additive was banned in 160 countries, but this number doesn't include the United States. Ractopamine has been linked to major health problems in food-producing animals, such as severe cardiovascular stress and Downer syndrome. That's where animals are too sick or injured to walk or even stand. In humans, it has also been linked to heart problems and even acute poisoning. Number 3, brominated vegetable oil. So, who doesn't enjoy an occasional soda? Who wants a soda with brominated vegetable oil, or BVO? Well, nobody in Europe or Japan apparently, because it's banned there. But not in the U.S. You probably haven't even heard of it until now. BVO is a food additive that is used to keep citrus flavoring from separating out in sodas and other beverages. It's totally unnecessary. They have sodas in Japan and Europe, but their sodas don't contain BVO. But what can this ingredient do for you? BVO is linked to major organ system damage, birth defects, growth problems, schizophrenia, and hearing loss. Bromine can irritate the skin and mucous membranes and even build up in fatty tissue. And long-term exposure can cause headaches, memory loss, and even impaired balance and coordination. Even though bromine was banned from use in sleep medicines, it can still be found in soda. Number 2, BHA and BHT. These two additives are found seemingly everywhere, such as in snack foods, meat, gum, cereal, vegetable oil, and butter. Food manufacturers use them to help keep the fats in foods stay fresher longer. They are antioxidants, which means they can protect certain compounds from the damage that comes from exposure to oxygen. They are even in cosmetic products, rubber products, and packaging materials. Now, why does the food industry want us to put in our body ingredients that are found in packaging materials? We have no idea, but we do know that BHA and BHT are banned in Japan, the UK, and throughout Europe thanks to research that shows that they are linked to cancer, organ system toxicity, skin irritation, and endocrine disruption. And while you might enjoy having that beer on the weekends, you might want to think twice. It might not seem like the best idea when you discover that BHA and BHT are probably in it. And while they must be listed on the labels of foods, that's not the case with beer. So they could be in there and you won't even know it. Number 1, GMOs. On our list, first place has to go to GMOs. While technically not a food additive, GMOs, or genetically modified foods, are a worldwide disaster and are much too big of a problem to leave off of this list. They're just another way food and chemical companies are monkeying around with our food and jeopardizing our health. While the EU and other countries have with good reason chosen to ban them, the US is pushing them onto the world. There are studies showing that eating GMO foods causes cancer, all kinds of organ failure, food allergies, and sterility just for starters.
Now, after taking a look at that lovely content that's in our food supply, if you look down to of course you have the skit here, it says, what is the special of today? Corn, you can have it two ways, either genetically altered or sauteed with pesticides. You know, and it said kind of jokingly, but that's kind of a sad fact. That's really a sad fact. But you might, you can sit here and go, well, you know what? don't want pork tapeworm. Don't want to go to a restaurant, get something that's not what I need. You know what? I'm just going to go to the store and buy my steak myself and cook it myself. That's the only way to be safe. Keep that in your mind as we read paragraph 3. It is the responsibility of our leaders, factory owners, farmers, and automobile owners, in short, everyone who breathes air, drinks water, and eats food, to develop a caring attitude about the environment. We as individuals and as a society can make choices that will protect our environment now and for our future generations. So once again, we're relying on businesses, factory owners, people that are producing these things at large amounts to give us a product that we want. And if I go to the store and I want to buy a steak, I want to know that I'm getting a steak. But is that actually what you get? Are there laws or rules that actually allow for other things to be put into beef here in the United States? Well, if we could go ahead and play video 5.
Nowadays, we tend to have no idea what's really in the food we eat. There are so many scandals in the food industry all over the world that it's difficult to keep up. Companies will do anything to sell their products, even putting our health at risk. Packaged meat. One of the main findings of an analysis has been that packaged minced meat has an inadequate proportion of protein and collagen. The presence of collagen is related to the fact that some parts of the animal that should not be included in this product are minced, such as cartilage and tendons. On the other hand, if you buy the meat at the butcher, you'll see if the piece is clean of it and that they are only serving you meat. There's a law that allows up to 1% traces of other types of meat than those advertised on the label inside the minced meat trays. What's surprising is that a study has shown that this percentage is actually much higher, even reaching 3% in some low-quality and cheaper meats, such as pork and chicken. What does this mean? Well, when we buy a tray of packaged minced beef in a supermarket, we can find that 3% is pork. When we buy a tray of packaged minced beef in a supermarket, we can find that 3% is pork, which is cheaper meat. However, the opposite is not the case, since beef is more expensive. It's a fairly common practice among many brands that, in this way, saves costs and manage them to fatten the contents of the tray by mixing the main meat with lower quality products.
So think about that. The next time you buy a steak from the store and you want to eat it medium rare, it's legal to put 1% pork in with your steak. And remember what they said, eating undercooked pork, it's possible that you can get tapeworm. Go online and study how many people, just Google it, An enormous amount of people suffer from brain tapeworm from pork. It's not a rare thing. But once again, these are things, rules that are bent a little so products can be sold to maximize profits. And you might be thinking, well, you know, if I get sick, there's antibiotics out there that'll keep me well. All I got to do is go to the doctor, get a shot. That's going to take care of everything. And then I'll be better. Because that's what science is for, right? They design some kind of chemical substance to fix my bad choices. If we could please go ahead and play video 6.
For the last 2 years, Dr. Lance Price has been on patrol.
I am that guy walking down the aisles of the grocery stores, buying every different brand of pork chops that I can find.
He's been tracking some of the most dangerous bacteria in our food supply. Dr. Price is one of many scientists who suspect that 21 million pounds of antibiotics fed to healthy animals on farms to promote growth are teaching bacteria to outsmart antibiotics, creating drug-resistant strains of infections like staph.
Thousands of animals tightly packed into unhygienic quarters, given regular doses of antibiotics. It's a perfect scenario for drug-resistant bacteria to grow.
Dr. Price's team tested 136 meat and poultry samples from grocery stores nationwide and found 47% contaminated with staph. Even more troubling, more than half the bacteria were resistant to at least 3 classes of antibiotics routinely used to treat skin, blood, and respiratory infections in humans.
The biggest thing that came out of this study was the recognition that multi-drug resistant staph is a routine contaminant of our food supply.
Even though staph can be killed by cooking meat at the proper temperature, it still poses a risk.
If I was sitting here handling a piece of poultry and I was doing it on this counter and then I didn't properly clean it up, I am then making my baby's bottle. I have the potential of contaminating whatever bacteria is in the meat on the baby bottle and giving it directly to the baby and the baby being sick.
So we could end up seeing the baby here because of the poultry bought in the supermarket.
Correct.
One recent study found nationwide more than 50% of all skin and soft tissue staph infections were antibiotic resistant. And to understand why that number keeps rising, today's study says, look no further than the farm.
So here we have, where our food is being given antibiotics due to the unhealthy environments they're being kept in. And it's, of course, done to maximize profits, but everything you put into the animal literally becomes your food supply. And I don't know about you, but I don't want hamburger meat that someone says, it's got staph, just make sure you cook it long enough and hot enough, and it'll be okay. I put that right up there with the water when they say, it's got fecal matter in it, but it's only certain amounts. You'll be okay. I'd rather not have it. When you think about what we've done as a society, well, why have these things gotten to this way of living? And a lot of it is just what David said in the last class. It's due to money. It's due to trying to generate a lot of money, less labor, more money, less work, and let's just enjoy life. Well, this enjoyment that we're trying to have is killing us. And, these are things that there's so much information been brought in the last month and a half in the Peaceful Solution. You could spend another month and a half just in this chapter looking at what is coming out, not only in the news, what countries are coming out with, what medical reports are coming out with, just the updates they come out with on COVID and RSV and the latest reports on cancer, heart disease. There's so much that is encompassed by this. And we're just really talking about the food supply, right now. But when we tend to think that chemicals are going to get us out of our bad choices, well, we see they're killing the soil, and they're getting in our food supply, and they're creating diseases that, well, the injections they're giving you can't stop them either. So what's the answer? Need a better drug, a stronger drug? Well, you just seen that they said that the bacteria and the parasites are learning to outsmart the injections that's being given, the antibiotics. They only work so long, and then they become stronger. And they outsmart the antibiotics. And you're literally waging warfare in the body between chemicals and parasites and bacteria that's not supposed to be in the body. Well, keep that in mind And let's turn back over to procedure 8, because going into page 217, that's in procedure 8, and try to keep a lot of these things in your mind. These are great things to not only discuss with your students, but it's something that no one's going to look at you and go, oh, that's just your opinion. There's so much information out there, and every video we brought you throughout this presentation and the other presentations for a month and a half have all been put out by scientists, doctors, and groups that are trying to warn people of the dangers in our society. We haven't produced any of these videos. We've only used videos, and we're very thankful that we're allowed to use them for education. We'd like to thank everyone that's allowed us to use those videos for the purpose of education and what's taking place in society. But here back on Lesson Plan 7, page E, and Procedure 8, it says, ask students for ideas of how individuals can help our environment. And they're probably going to be pretty depressed by the time you get to this. If you've shown them all the videos and all the filth that we live in society, you can be pretty depressed by the time you get to this point. But it was our choices that got us here, and it's only our choices that can get us out of it. And we have to either continue down this road or make a change. Well, write their suggestions on the board, allow class discussion about the different ideas and actions they do have control over. Once again, the things you control, that's how you make choices. Instruct students to turn to page 217 and read the section entitled, Take a Bite Out of This, and a few tips to help you control your actions regarding the environment. Let students know that the efforts of just one person can make a difference. And that's what we've been talking about all the way through the Peaceful Solution, that every person, that ripple effect, makes a difference. If you can turn back over to page 217, we're going to at least get into this page where we have just a little bit of time left. And once again, we're in the section that says, take a bite out of this. Are you thinking that you can't change the world by making others care about the environment? Well, you can't make anyone do anything. And that's the first thing that we all have to acknowledge. You can't make anyone do anything. You can only make a change through education. And education, as is on the front of all of the Peaceful Solution books, can help change the hearts and minds. It can change decision making. But people have to truly know you don't want to have to be told you have stage 3 or stage 4 cancer before you start caring about cancer. You don't want to be told that you have the latter stages of heart disease before you start caring. You don't want to be told that you have an STD that's going to be with you for the rest of your life before you start caring about what takes place. You have to care before the problem comes. If you're only going to care after it comes, that's like only caring about the car wreck until after you're in the car wreck, when you could have avoided it. Well, notice here it says the truth is you can't make anybody do anything. The only person you can control is you. So practice self-control in how you treat the environment, and by your example, you can encourage others to do the same. And of course, that's the ripple effect that takes place. One person making a decision and it goes outwardly. And of course, you know, I know in biology and microbiology, there's an enormous amount of study that goes on in school. Knowing what I know now, I would have much rather have studied the microbes in the dirt than have dissected frogs and cow eyeballs. I would have learned an enormous amount more by learning what was in the soil. And I tell you, it's very interesting. And there's a lot of information out there, but the one thing they tell you is that our oceans, scientists know very little about what's in our oceans. And in the soil, they know even less. And when you talk about 1 tablespoon of soil contains billions of microkingdoms, that's an enormous amount. You know, and these are the things that actually produce the things that we use to live. And they also produce they kind of recycle our waste. You know, if you think about it, we only have so much water on Earth, and it's all being recycled continually. The Earth cleans it up if we let the Earth do its job and we don't hold the Earth back from doing its job. But it cleans it up. There's no waterfall coming from the moon or from Mars or from Jupiter. The water we have is the water we use, and the Earth can clean it up. And you see it when it comes through well water, the purification coming through the ground. Well, what cleans it up? You know, scientists will be the first ones to tell you that we've got an idea, but it's much more detailed than what we know. And it's a very interesting topic if you ever want to study that with your students. But here you have a few tips to help you control your actions regarding the environment. 1, don't litter. Dispose of garbage and trash properly. And think about all things. Trash, waste, biological waste. Dispose of all of those things properly. Don't flush your toilet and drink it again. Wash your hands thoroughly as often as possible, and especially before you eat. Also before you serve someone. If you're serving food, make sure your hands are clean. You've seen the bacteria that were on the plates and the glasses. The third, know your water. If your water comes from a well, the risk of contamination is great when pesticides are applied during the growing season. If your water comes from a community or city source, find out if the water is tested for chemical or biological contaminants. Biological contaminants would be defined as human waste. Even when you put septic systems in, they have to be so many feet from the well. You can't put a septic system in beside your well. And you can't put a well beside a septic system. The two will not work with each other. They need the areas to do their own jobs, and they need separation. And next here, notice never pour toxic chemicals like paint thinner or pesticides down the drain. Why? It's going into your water supply. Don't forget the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that are poured down the drain. And remember, we showed that the water systems does not filter it out. Most communities have a recycle center where these products can be disposed of properly. Find out where there is one in your community. And of course, most communities, even our community, has one. And we're a very small community, but we have one. Wash your vegetables, fruit, eggs, meat, and then soak them in salt water to help remove any pesticides, herbicides, or other chemicals. Try to eat as much organically grown food as possible. Well, why would you do that? Well, look at the things that we've just talked about, the chemical additives and what they're doing to the body. And why wash them in salt water? Well, it's been proved to be able to remove certain bacteria that are on the food. This is scientific fact, and it's a very simple thing to do. And you can go online and read about this. Salt's a very powerful substance in itself in a healthy way. But of course, if you take a container of salt and try to chug the whole thing, that's not going to be so healthy. So everything is used in its rightful purpose. But actually, it's beneficial and helps you. We're going to stop right there because we're going to come back and cover some things on this page in the next class because we're already out of time. But it's really important for everyone to get these things in their mind along with all of the things that have been brought in the last month and a half in this Chapter 70 of the Self-Control Unit to understand exactly what our society is. And it's much more than bombs and missiles. We're doing things on a very minor scale that we can't see that seems so harmless, but it's actually, we're killing the things that are there to help us live. So our next class is going to be on this coming Wednesday. It'll be the 30th of November, and it'll be at 5:30 p.m. Thank you once again for joining us.